Welcome back to The Burn. I'm Ryan Van Dever, and we are presented to you by Hot Zone Sports. The information that you need to know, built with you in mind, for the people, by the people, and with the people. Join the Hot Zone Sports community today. Remember, our show is wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify. So if you could rate and review us, we would really appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, first off, congratulations. And secondly, subscribe to the show and then hit the notification button so you'll always know when our content drops. Make sure you like the videos, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And wherever you like the social media, we are there. That's right. You can find us at Hot Zone Sports. Just look for the logo, man. College football recap. Yes, you know we had to do it. We put on our previews over this past weekend, so you knew we were going to get right back into it. But let's go ahead and start with the game of the week. All right, so let's not get it twisted here. I did not expect Indiana to win this game for many reasons. I just wanted them to keep it close. I thought they could keep it close, just in honor of the college football 12-team playoff. But I definitely did not expect them to win this game for many reasons. And one of those reasons was because this is kind of different for them. They have not been to many top 5 matchups where the stadium is completely sold out. There's all that pressure on your team. Just all of these equations added into the mix for this game in particular. So there was a lot of pressure when you were playing these top 5 matchups, right? Okay, so Ohio State in general has played 3 top 5 matchups this season, and this was Indiana's first top 5 matchup. So maybe the pressure was a little bit too much for Indiana. But when it came to Ohio State, the pressure, they've been able to get over these potential pressure spots. They've been in these situations plenty of times throughout the years, and more importantly, in this season alone. So they're more comfortable with it than Indiana is. You could definitely see that they were not comfortable in this game. And Ohio State did a great job taking advantage of these situations. Indiana went up 7-0 and didn't really do much else throughout the rest of the game, while Ohio State was dominating in all 3 phases of the game. And you have to say special teams was a key factor in this game. Indiana giving up 2 touchdowns off of special teams was massive. For the rest of the country, especially in a college football 12-team playoff, you should worry about how Ohio State is finding their identity right now. You haven't been able to say that too many times in years past. They were continuously trying to find their identity throughout the season, and they still, when they got into the playoff, they still hadn't found the identity of their team. That is not the way they are this year. When they were in the top 5, and you can say that now, and when it comes to championship caliber teams, this is one that I would really worry about, okay? As a season comes to a close, because when a team finds their identity this late in the season, they're going to become a very dangerous team. They have answers everywhere on this team. Offensively, defensively, special teams. Eventually, teams are going to be put into a corner, and they are going to have to respond. And this is the way it's going to go in the college football 12-team playoff. You're going to be painted into a corner, and you're going to have to find some answer. And that is how champions are crowned. When it comes to college football teams, and I'm speaking of elite teams here, a lot of teams do one thing really well. Tennessee, the Volunteers, they run the ball really well. Indiana, the Hoosiers, they pass the ball really well. But with Ohio State, they can beat you in a multitude of ways. On offense, they have proven that they can pass the ball really well. They can run the ball really well. Even with all the offensive linemen that are being exchanged in for each other guy, they can pass the ball out of the sidelines. Will Howard this was probably his best game of the season. Just 22 of 26, 201 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was highly efficient. And that he played the way he played, and the key matchup against Indiana, he played spectacularly. Now, as many of you know, I watch a lot of Kansas State football. And for the previous 3 years, Will Howard played for the Wildcats. Now, call it whatever you want. Call it him involving his game or him having 5-star blue chipper prospects on the offensive side of the ball. Call it whatever you want. But this was his best game. And week in and week out, he continues to progress as a quarterback. And that is what you want to see as an Ohio State fan. Me personally, I'm not an Ohio State fan. But this is what you want to see if you are a fan. Because when he transferred, I was not sold that he was going to end up being the starter. But he has proved me wrong. So there's that. But you also have to worry about the Buckeyes running the ball, because when they played Penn State, in order to close out the game, they had to run the clock out. And then run the clock out they did, and they did it efficiently. They have an offense that is multi-dimensional. You take away the pass, and they'll run the ball and open up the pass. You stop the run, and then their wide receivers will gash you. They have a multitude of answers for you. They can run it inside. They can run it outside the numbers. Their quarterback can run. They can do play action pass, RPO, RPI. They can throw it down the field. They can throw it inside the pocket. They can throw it outside the pocket. I could go on, but I think I have made my point, right? There is a lot to defend on this team, as exhibited above. So let's get to the defensive side of the field. And they're starting to gel together as well. As I stated before, this is a multi-dimensional team. They don't really have a lot of weaknesses like a lot of teams in college football. For example, the Buckeyes. They can run man coverage. They can do zone coverage. They can drum up good blitz packages, or they can rush 4. Then there's the defensive pressure that they brought to Curtis Rourke. I'm sure you all saw during that game, they were rushing 4, and they were just busting through the line like they are now constantly bringing pressure towards the teams that they are playing. This is different. Rourke just had no time when the blitz packages that were being sent his way. In the previous top 5 matchups, they weren't even applying too much pressure. But in this game, they adapted to the situation at hand after Indiana's first drive and dominated. I mean, Indiana was held to just 15 points and 151 total yards of offense. That isn't just by mistake. This isn't just a system where they have holes on the defense. No, they have depth at every position on the field, and the scheme they are running is just creating havoc, and they are extremely dominant. Their defense is ranked number 1 in the FBS in scoring and in total defense. This is not an accident. But let's talk about the gaffe. That gaffe in the first half where the punt is dropped was a game changer. Do not glance over this. There was a little under 2 minutes under the game. It was tied at 7. And the punter, Evans, just drops the ball. And then on the Hoosiers' first drive out of the second half, they go 3 and out. And they have to punt the ball again. And Caleb Downs is sitting back there just waiting for his moment. He spins off of a guy and boom, takes it to the house. The special teams for Indiana were solely responsible for 14 points, and that cannot happen in a game of this magnitude against a top 5 team in the nation. Let's go ahead and move on to the SEC because good night. I could title this the SEC Chaos because there was chaos looming Saturday into Saturday evening until it crossed over at midnight. It was all day long. The SEC, over the years, they have been one of the more dominant conferences. Once some would argue the most dominant conference in all of college football. But after Saturday, we saw more chaos than we were expecting over the weekend. I mean, I personally stayed up way too late watching the Texas A&M Auburn game. And what an absolute thriller of a game that was. Texas A&M climbed back into it after being 21 down. And nothing after being down 21-0. They ended up coming back, going into overtime, and they just let the game get out of control. But the SEC chaos, man, it was just nuts. Like, did anybody expect it? I did. You got 5-6 Oklahoma dominating Alabama. Like, I get it. Oklahoma's defense has been good all year long. 24-3, they haven't been that dominant. Not against Alabama, not against Jalen Milroe, not against a multi-dimensional quarterback, not against Ryan Williams, not against their rushing attack. Like, they just got taken to the woodshed and bam, got taken out. You got Florida, who beat Ole Miss. Ole Miss, they were slotted to be a bubble team. They were on the outside looking in of the college football playoff. All they had to do was win out, and everybody's like, okay, they're playing Oklahoma. It's a gimme. Or they're playing Florida. It's a gimme. It's a 5-loss Florida. It's a gimme, right? Nope. It was not a gimme because Florida beat Ole Miss, and Jackson Dart played probably one of his worst college football games of his career. Auburn beat Texas A&M. Like, it was just downright insanity on Saturday in the SEC. Okay, so let me go ahead and sign this waiver where it says right here, yeah, it's on my hand, I promise. It says I am not hating on the conference. I am just speaking the facts right now. The SEC has officially lost the benefit of the doubt when it comes to their conference. No longer can you lose to a team and say it was a good loss. We are past that now. Okay, guys? But I will say the SEC is an extremely difficult conference, especially when you are one of the teams sitting at the top of the conference. It's highly competitive week in and week out. I will not dispute that fact. I will not discredit that. But it is incredibly difficult to run through the SEC unblemished. And yes, there will be plenty of draft picks that come out of this conference. There always is. And there probably always will be. Especially with Texas and Oklahoma adding themselves into the SEC. Saying that these upper teams cannot lose to the bottom tier. They can't. The upper teams cannot lose to the bottom tier teams. That is not how it has ever been. When you're Alabama and you lose to Oklahoma, a team that has been 1-5 in their last 5 FBS opponents. When you lose to Vanderbilt, who lost to Georgia State. Yeah, didn't forget that one, guys. That's a bad one. When you lose to a 7-loss Kentucky team. Yes, Ole Miss, we're talking to you. And you lose to a 5-loss Florida team. Yes, you lost in the swamp. I get it. Tough place to play. But you seriously can't say that it's a tough to win in the SEC on the road. It's hard to win on the road in any conference, not just the SEC. I mean, you hear this shit absolutely everywhere on these popular networks that I will not name. They always come out and they say, it's tough to win in the SEC. It's hard to win road games in the SEC. I mean, seriously, you guys sound like you are about to drum up another damn commercial for the SEC country. Out to drum up that commercial and shove it down everybody's throat. They're having me down here this year. They may have a 3-loss team get into the college football playoff. Why don't you just go make another commercial about that? We don't need any slogans that say it's hard to win on the road in the SEC. Sorry, Mike. Stop glazing your conference. Nobody wants to hear this shit anymore. Look at Penn State at Minnesota. Look at Oregon at Wisconsin. Look at BYU at Arizona State. It's in every damn conference. Stop it. It's hard to win on the road, period. For the longest time, the top 5 teams in the SEC were beating each other up. But they wouldn't really lose to the bottom 5 teams per se. But this year is a different year. Top 5 teams are losing to the bottom teams. And they aren't just losing, they're getting drubbed. You had Ole Miss that had to win out in order to get to the college football playoff. And now they are on the outside looking in because they lost at Florida. And then you had Texas A&M, who's on the outside looking in as well. They were one of the teams that if you win out, they could get into the college playoff as well. But what happens is they lose to an Auburn team who shouldn't have even been on the same damn field as them, but somehow, some way, Auburn comes out on top, and now Texas A&M are going to find it extremely difficult to get into the college football playoff, and now they have Texas upcoming this week. It seems like little brother is only going to be able to make this game with the Longhorns competitive if they want to crush the dreams and spirits of Texas Nation and knock them out of the SEC championship and possible college football playoff berth. But who did all of these losses benefit? Oh, wait. Tennessee, the Volunteers, they had a whale of a day. All the teams that needed to lose lost. But now they are in a damn solid position. Now, Tennessee is in a solid position at being in the college football playoff. And they are pretty close to getting into the SEC championship too. Yes, they're tied with Texas A&M right now. But if Texas A&M loses to Texas, look out. They might be able to climb up there. Or it might just end up being a regular Georgia versus Texas rematch. And who knows how the hell that will go, because Carson Beck has been struggling all season long. It has been ugly. But last week, Tennessee, they were on the outside looking in. And now they couldn't be happier. I don't know when the last time was that Vol fans rooted for the Gators. But wow, I am sure every Tennessee Vol fans was all in on the Florida Gators taking down Ole Miss. But it's okay, because Alabama, you can't lose to Alabama, or you can't lose to Oklahoma. It was just, they lost 5 out of their last 6 games against FBS opponents. You can't lose to Vandy, which lost to Georgia State. Hey, Ole Miss, you can't lose to 7-loss Kentucky. That just can't happen. When everything is on the line, you can't lose to a 5-loss Florida. You can't do that. So for this discussion, there is no way that Alabama or Ole Miss gets into the college football playoff, because they played themselves out of the college football playoff with these losses that I discussed. Like, it is just not going to happen. No matter how bad your fan base wants it, it's just not going to happen. It is not in your crystal ball future. You would have to have everything go wrong and everything go right for these two teams. Like, it would be complete pandemonium. But it's not going to happen, so there's no sense in even talking about it any further. Right, guys? But they are clearly done for. Now, let's get into the Big 12 game of the week. BYU, Arizona State. Some say the Big 12 game of the week was Kansas, Colorado. Well, it was close for a while, and then Colorado decided to say, yeah, I want to go to the Big 12 championship. That's about how that worked. So, say what you want about Arizona State and Kenny Dillingham, but what they have accomplished this year is downright remarkable and nasty. They go from the preseason ranked dead last in the Big 12 to now they have a real possibility of playing in the Big 12 championship. So do not downplay what Kenny Dillingham has done for the Sun Devils, because it is absolutely remarkable. So they had a big matchup last Saturday. Against BYU, and they absolutely had to win this game. This is a team that controls their own destiny. There's a lot of teams out there like this. And just like what Dillingham has done most of the season, what his team did on Saturday was just win. Now, you can call this an upset, but I'm not going to call this an upset because BYU has been on the ropes the past couple of weeks. I mean, yes, they're ranked 14th in the nation, and Arizona State was ranked 21st in the nation. So you could call it an upset if you want to. I'm not going to, though. They lost to KU last week, and KU basically gave Arizona State the blueprint on how to beat BYU. So they were also playing at home, and you know what they say, it's hard to win any game on the road, no matter what conferences you're in. They jumped out to a big lead, and it was a big lead, and ultimately held on in the end. So now Arizona State is in the driver's seat of potentially getting into the Big 12 championship. All they have to do is beat Arizona. I think it's called the Territorial Bolt or something like that. I try not to know everything, but they're going to be playing Arizona in this game. I'll just talk about it for a little bit. They're playing Arizona, and Arizona has been one of the more disappointing teams in the Big 12 this season. They were expected to be in the top half of the conference, and they are nothing but the bottom half. But what if they went out and they go to the Big 12 championship? It's a possibility, not a strong possibility, but a possibility all the less that they could sneak into the college football playoff as well. And if that does happen, that is going to be one hell of a turnaround where Arizona State, after just one season, completely flipped the script. But the end of this game needs to be talked about, needs to be studied, because it was absolutely bonkers. The end of the ASU BYU game needs to be studied in depth. The Sun Devils had the ball down inside the 5-yard line, right? And rather than scoring and making it a 2-possession game, they decided to run backwards to run the clock out. I thought I only saw this in Madden. Then they throw the ball up with 6 seconds left to try to air it out. The game of sorts, but it lands out of bounds with just 1 second left, which, if you were watching in real time, was the correct call. Didn't it, Dillingham? There's no reason to be mad. But the fans storm the field, and the refs still have to review that call. And Kenny Dillingham absolutely loses his mind. But do you know why he lost his mind? Like, do you really, as a man myself, if I'm losing an argument, I'm going to lose my mind in the middle of it, even when I know that I'm wrong. But Dillingham ends up losing his mind because He knows that he's wrong. So he's just trying to save face right now. Like, he screwed up massively. But in reality, he should have just scored the touchdown and gone up 2 scores. Like, it's not even running up to score. I don't know what he's thinking. I'm sure we'll find out later in the week what he was thinking and get some kind of closure on that crazy, crazy mess. But this mismanagement at the end of the game really, really needs to be studied, because it was a mismanagement of epic proportions. Like, it was so bad. The funny thing about all of this is all the fans had already taken the goalpost down, and at the end of it, they had to put it right back up. Then after all that, BYU catches a Hail Mary. Like, it's just wild. They catch a Hail Mary a couple of yards short of the goal line. So after all of that, they are now in control of their own destiny. God help them, by the way. Kenny Dillingham, don't do that again. So now there is a 4-way tie in the Big 12, but Iowa State and Arizona State control their own destiny. But in the honor of chaos, because chaos is king, Colorado can still get into the championship game. Yes, they can. But they are going to need help. They would need to win and have 2 out of the 3 teams of BYU, Arizona State, and Iowa State lose. So you're saying there's a chance. Sorry, Dumb and Dumber. It happens from time to time. Now, the other highlight game of the weekend, Army Notre Dame, played in the beautiful Yankee Stadium. Notre Dame entered Saturday on the cusp of making a return to the college football playoff. I know there's a bunch of haters out there, but guess what? They've rattled off 9 straight wins after this game. But to get one step closer to accomplishing the college football playoff, Marcus Freeman's squad had to take down one of the hottest and more surprising teams in college football this season, number 17, Army. Now, the 6th-ranked Irish have that one loss with 10 wins. They ended up routing the Black Knights 49-14, and this could have been called a pseudo college football playoff elimination game for both teams. While it was a big running night for the Notre Dame's offense, the main storyline from Saturday's Shamrock Series win for the Irish is the perfect game from the Al Golden's defense pitched. Like, it was perfect. Entering the night with the nation's top rushing offense, who was busting out 334.9 yards per game, Army was held to 207 yards rushing on Saturday, with quarterback Bryson Daly responsible for 145 of them. Daly also secured both touchdowns for the Black Knights. Notre Dame quarterback Riley Leonard continued where he left off last week versus Virginia, as he finished 10 of 13 passing for 148 yards and 2 touchdowns. Running back Jeremiah Love had himself a career game with 136 total scrimmage yards and 3 combined touchdowns. Freeman and the Irish entered Saturday's pivotal game as the current 8th seed in the latest college football rankings. That ranking will likely improve for Notre Dame, as the college football picture was shaken up quite a bit on Saturday, and with this game against Army, it only improved their strength of record. The Irish finished the game, but if you really look back at the game, it was probably one of the more consistent scoring games of the season for the Irish. They tallied up 14 points in the first, second, and third quarters and tacked on an additional 7 to close out the fourth quarter. Army managed to score in the second and fourth quarters, but the game's outcome was really never in question. Notre Dame put its rushing strength on full display against what had been one of college football's most difficult and stingy defenses against the run. 5 of the Irish's touchdowns came on the ground, and they also claimed 2 touchdowns through the air. Army's 2 scores were rushing touchdowns. Notre Dame's 2024 rushing group is getting better and better as they go down the stretch. Each of the team's key running backs walked away with touchdowns against Army. Jadarian Price, Jeremiah Love, they both had 2, and then freshman Aeneas Williams recorded his second career rushing touchdown. Love led the team in production with 7 carries for 130 yards, while Price tallied up 53 yards on 10 carries, and Williams had 62 yards on 3 carries. But I did love what Marcus Freeman said before the game about being violent. And I loved what he said at halftime as Notre Dame led 28-7, but just botched a field goal attempt. Freeman, who was interviewed at halftime, immediately referenced mindset and mentality and came off as upset after leaving points on the board just before the break. This is the sign of a leader who isn't satisfied with being good. And not just once, but he expects his team to be great and isn't going to make excuses when they don't perform at that level. So I really love that. Notre Dame football is firing on most cylinders. Not all cylinders, most cylinders, going into their final regular season game against USC. And do not get it twisted. USC may not look the best, but it is a rivalry game, and we all know, as college football fans, how rivalry games go in college football. I am getting the feeling that Marcus Freeman is starting to get his team going at the right time. Yes, they lost to Northern Illinois. Do not let that be overshadowed. But if they didn't lose to Northern Illinois, do we really think that they would have rattled off 9 straight wins? When there is a devastating loss to a football team, it is going to bring your football team together. And this is the way I see it. Marcus Freeman and company have the team locked in, and they seem to be incredibly confident with executing with their tools at their disposal. A look around the nation gives a good look at the help Notre Dame is receiving to not just get a potential home game, but perhaps even more importantly, favorable matchups in both the first and the second rounds. I said it after Notre Dame beat Texas A&M in week 1. I didn't feel so great about saying it a week later, but I'm feeling good in saying it now. Everything is right in front of this Notre Dame team as we turn to the final week of the regular season, and they are headed in the right direction. All they have to do is beat the Trojans. Go Irish. Don't unsubscribe because I said that. All right, so we had to talk about it. We're going to discuss the Colts a little bit. Now, I will send you a reminder. Do not forget, we are going to be going live. Me with the Horseshoe Mob podcast. We are going live on Facebook, Twitter. Just look for us. It is Horseshoe Mob podcast, and we're going to be going live at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So come check us out, ask us questions, and whether you're a Colts fan or you're not, you want to get into the topic of discussion, go ahead and join us. But for this little segment, we are going to talk about the Colts just a little bit and give you a little taste. So the Colts yesterday, they had a season-high 10 penalties for Indianapolis. 97 yards were negated for the offense by penalties. Some were highly questionable calls by the refs, right? I mean, the Colts had a golden opportunity. They had a golden goose sitting right in front of them to hang with one of the NFL's top dogs on Sunday, but they couldn't get out of their own way. And they fell to the Detroit Lions 24-6. Whether it was penalties, a lack of focus, or awareness in the passing game, the inability to run the ball or miss tackles, the Colts did plenty to make things more difficult against arguably the best team in the league. But the box score doesn't tell the whole story. If you are following my Twitter, yep. Yeah, right there. If you are not following my Twitter, you better go follow, because I am posting some banger Colts content and getting under the skin of Mr. Dan Dockich. Oh, Mr. Dan Dockich, by the way, the offer still stands. You can come on my show anytime and discuss the Colts at length. Just know we will be discussing it together. And just because you're a popular guy doesn't mean there will not be any pushback. Moving on. Sorry, guys. The box score, whether you're watching the box score or you're watching the game, you should have watched the game. Don't be a box score watcher. Because if you see the 11 for 28, obviously, oh, it's glaring. Oh, 11 for 28. Anthony Richardson had another horrible game, guys. Yeah, watch the game. How about that? Anthony Richardson has showed growth many had hoped to see on the heels of his breakout performance last week. The numbers were not pretty, as his 39.3% completion percentage shows. But he received little help unless he was throwing to Michael Pittman Jr. or Josh Downs. The offensive line was freaking pathetic, and there were a few plays in the passing game where pass catchers weren't even prepared for the ball heading their way. Drew Ogletree, but it didn't seem to know they were even on the field. Like maybe they didn't know there was a game in Indianapolis yesterday. We'll never know. But there were other plays where they just flat out dropped the ball. The box score does not give any justice to Richardson from a completion outlook. 172 yards, 11 of 22, or 11 of 28. But he dealt with drops and penalties that took away from his passing production. He was the team's leading rusher with 61 yards on 10 attempts. You can attribute that to 3 rookie offensive linemen starting next to Quentin Nelson. And do not get me started on Quentin Nelson, because he had by far the worst game of his career. Anthony Richardson, though, with all the issues, he was not sacked. He was under heavy pressure most of the day, particularly by Aleem McNeil, through the battered and young offensive line and veterans Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith. Yeah, you can't forget him. It has been an issue. Unless Richardson is running the ball, it feels like the Colts can barely buy a rushing yard right now, which is life when 3 of your 5 offensive linemen are rookies. I mean, let's discuss it for a minute, okay? Your offensive line depth is ruled by rookies. Right guard Dalton Tucker entered the game 175th out of 200 qualifying NFL offensive linemen in run blocking, according to Pro Football Focus, which helps explain why the interior running towards the right side of the line has not been fruitful. Richardson finished the day with 61 yards, 10 carries on a 6.1 average clip, while Jonathan Taylor only had 35 yards on 11 carries, which is a 3.2 yard clip. This game was obviously not the outcome that the Colts wanted, and the stats don't reflect it, but I thought there was more good from Anthony Richardson. He was often on time and rhythm. Again, he displayed good command of the offense. And if you want to go to the box score and try to find that, good luck. You have to actually watch the game to be able to see it. He was able to push the ball downfield consistently. But with a big but here. With the team falling behind early in the second half, it forced the Colts to become pass heavy, which has happened plenty of times throughout the season, which isn't conducive for the offense. But he also dealt with quite a bit of pressure, along with there being penalties that wiped out several positive plays. Per Next Gen Stats, Anthony Richardson completed only 2 of 14 passes for 33 yards when the Lions pressured him, compared to 9 of 14 passes for 139 yards when he had a clean pocket. Detroit generated pressure on 14 of 30 dropbacks for a 46.7 pressure rate, their highest in a game this season. That doesn't tell you enough about the offensive line. I do not know what to tell you. Ideally, when Bernhard Raimann returns, is going to elevate this unit, but there needs to be a conversation. If Dalton Tucker should continue at right guard, he is the worst right guard in the NFL. Sorry, he is. He got beat often by Ali McNeil. McNeil generated 4 quick pressures with under 2.5 seconds, which is tied for the most by any defensive tackle in a game in 2024. It was a down performance by the offensive line. We cannot state that more. There were a number of throws where Richardson had a defender in his lap, along with the unit being called for a number of penalties. Way too many penalties. Against a team of the Lions' caliber, a clean game is a requirement, and the Colts had way too many penalties, wiped out positive plays. Overall, against the NFL's highest scoring offense, the Colts were able to hold the Lions to 10 points below their average. However, Detroit picked up at least 3 3rd-and-7 conversions to move the chain, 2 of which came in the red zone and ended in touchdowns. And this scored on a 3rd and goal as well. While the Colts limited the Lions' scoring production compared to what they normally put up, for many of the reasons mentioned, we saw why this offense is a well-oiled machine, as they put up nearly 400 total yards and controlled every aspect of the game. Now, if you want to see more, tune in tomorrow as me and the Horseshoe Mob Podcast live stream on Twitter and Facebook, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. Come join us. Get in the chat. Just because the Colts lost don't mean that we don't have stuff to say. And we have stuff to say. I am Ryan V. Deaver, and we are Hot Zone Sports. Thank you for tuning in today to the Burn and making us your first listen of the day. Hey, before you leave, give this video a thumbs up. Can you do that, YouTubers? It really helps us pop in a big way. Everything is free here. That's all we ask of you. Leave a comment below. And if you're on the podcast on Apple or Spotify, drop us that 5-star rating and review. It does help us out tremendously. So thank you guys for doing that. Also follow us on all of our social media platforms at Hot Zone Sports and join the sports pages that is meant for you, because this is truly why we do this. It ain't for me. It's for you. For the people. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click that notification button. And have a blessed week. We will be back on Friday. So just go ahead and stay tuned.